technology by changing the traditional model of irrigation in a time of constant increasing crop demand. Learn about the cutting-edge innovations being developed by Valley Irrigation that's making it easier for growers to conserve resources, increase yield, and manage their operation.
Good evening and welcome to Rural America Live. I'm Tammy Arender. Well, water and the sun are critical natural resources when it comes to your operation, and not having enough can break a grower's bottom line. And that's why we're learning how Valley Irrigation is helping farmers manage their ever-changing situations. Plus, they're giving away a Yeti cooler to one lucky on-air caller tonight, so make sure you stick around for that. And I'd like to welcome in Water Delivery and Business Development Vice President Darren Siekman and Director of Product Management Aaron Coy, who are both live from our studios in Fort Worth, Texas tonight. Thank you both for being here. Looking forward to a great show. Before we dive into this concept, tell our viewers a little bit about yourselves and how you got your start with Valley Irrigation. Darren, let's start with you.
Well, thanks, Tammy. Well, a lot of my irrigation expertise growing up consisted of knowing how to set siphon tubes, as well as lugging around a lot of gated pipe in central Nebraska, where my dad was a county extension agent, but both grandpas farmed. However, maybe more relevant to our visit tonight is I have one of the coolest jobs at Valley, which is I get to travel the world looking for the latest technologies and bringing them into Valley, depending upon or assuming that they're going to give good paybacks to growers. So that is something that's we've really made a concerted effort on over these last, say, 5 years to really up our technology game.
Love the fact that you started really at the grassroots there of the irrigation industry. Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. I'm excited to be here tonight to discuss Valley and all of the solutions that we have to offer. I actually grew up in south central Nebraska, and my grandfather was a row crop farmer in western Iowa, so I spent lots of time out in the fields and doing, I guess, what kids do. I went to school to get my engineering degree and did engineering for a while and decided I wanted to get into some more experience in the whole business side of things, and that's really what brought me to Valley to join the product management team at Valley.
All right, well, wonderful to have you both with us tonight. Darren, Valley is really accelerating technology and connecting the farm so growers can continue to produce more with less. And now you're harnessing the power of the sun to gain greater efficiency on the farm with the launch of Ag Solar by Valley Irrigation in the U.S. Tell us more about that.
Well, absolutely, Tammy. What we see is energy costs are a big component of really when a farmer irrigates. And so what we heard from growers and our dealers as well is the ability to start to harness that, because even before this recent inflationary cycle, we'd had growers that, maybe where I grew up in central Nebraska, there might be a 40% premium for power. However, in South America, it was easily 700%. So we're able to find a company that they call them, they're an EPC. And what that means is they engineer the design custom for each grower, they procure the product, and then our dealer is the construction arm. And for most of you, you know that our Valley dealers are spread out all over the United States, and that's what they do for the center pivot is they design it for the farmer. They're able to get the parts, mostly from us, but sometimes from the outside, and then really put that whole package together. So that's something that we've been excited about because we've got over 500 installations in Brazil, and we recently brought that to North America at Husker Harvest Days in Grand Island, Nebraska earlier this fall.
Yeah, I mean, this is exciting news for those growers here in North America. But Darren, some may be asking, why is an irrigation company getting into the solar market? Is your application just for center pivots in irrigation, or can anyone benefit?
Well, that was really one of our discoveries, was the fact that we needed a lot of growers have diversified operations. And so we're really focusing on not just that rooftop, maybe a household type installation. not something that covers 20 acres, but something around 400 to 500 kilowatts usually. And while that might drive 4 or 5 center pivots, more importantly, it will also drive a feed mill. It could help out a dairy, and in a lot of cases even is providing the power for the grower's home, or if he has on-site staff as well, that if he has hired men or people that are living on site. So it's really an agribusiness focus because, again, that's what we know, and that's what our dealers really do a great job at.
Definitely. So it can be used in some diverse operations. Now, Aaron, the success that you've seen in South America and the acquisition of the leading agricultural solar company has really paved the way to proven success for North America. Tell us more about the success.
Yeah, that really goes back to what Darren touched on with the EPC. You know, our dealers are well established. We have the best distribution network within North America, and they're really good at the engineer, procure, and construct, and leveraging that technology. You know, so not only do we have dealers in North America, but we also have dealers globally that are able to provide that solution. On top of that, you know, Valley's been cutting, bending, and welding steel for 75 years. We're really good at doing that and providing a reliable structural solution. And we're not just looking at providing the structure, we're looking at the total solution, just like what we do with the center pivot. And so, you know, we will be providing solar panels as well as inverters and the structure and wiring and everything that's required to outfit a solar operation. And, you know, down in the company in South America has roughly 500, a little over 500 installs. So this isn't, you know, 2 or 3 installs in their backyard. They're a well-established organization that has a strong team that we can leverage in North America as resources to ensure success.
Yeah, and I know that means a lot to our growers to have that track record. Darren, given the impact that inflation will have on growers, energy costs really play an important role. So how important is solar energy on the farm? And more importantly, what impact can growers expect from solar?
Well, and I think this is where, again, it's nice that we've got the ability to go with our case studies. And so we've got a grower, Mr. Azevedo in Brazil. He's not a huge farmer by Brazil standards or even the U.S. standards, you know, about 700-800 acres. But they were spending nearly $4,000 a month it was their power bill prior to installing solar. So our team actually developed 4 modules, installed the modules, and basically drove the cost of his monthly costs now to 0. So again, that's one of the things that we want to get in front of those growers and do the worksheet, do the math to make sure that these sort of investments pay off, because they are consequential investments, but we're really excited about the potential that this brings to really all of our growers. And I think we also have a video of Mr. Corso, and he's going to tell us in his own words exactly how it's benefited for his farm. Again, I know we're just bringing this to America. That's one of our focuses of tonight. But we've got, as Aaron mentioned, real case studies, and I think this is a great one.
All right, let's take a look.
Our operation started with our grandfather in the 70s. It started very small, but nowadays we have a big company. It's still familiar, but very big. We own about 90,000 hectares of land, of which we plant 50,000 hectares. The main difficulties that we face is that most of our land is in the state of Mato Grosso, and the infrastructure is very poor. So it's very difficult to get the energy we need to make the irrigation project complete. We chose to use solar energy because it's very important to take care of the environment. We chose to work with Valley because of the proximity we have with their workers. Their after sales is very good, so they don't just come to you and try to sell the product. They work with you, they make the project with you, and they are there with you when you start the project. The results we saw using the solar energy is huge, especially now in Brazil, that the energy cost has gone really up. So we estimated a payback in 6 years of the investment, and now it's probably 3 or 4 years we'll have the payback of the investment.
Wow, so you can see the return on investment there. Now, Darren, why should farmers consider solar energy over traditional energy methods?
Well, I think there's several reasons for that. And it's very evident when we think about even just start with one of the most basic, which is we all grew up with a lot of generator or gen sets out there. Whether that be an old 350 Chevy maybe back in the day, and today most of them will be diesel. But regardless, you have a lot of costs for fuel, you have the environmental impact for fuel, and what we see, unfortunately, also, whether it's here in the US or as we walk around the world, there is a lot of theft, unfortunately. So, and maybe it's just kids out messing around, but I know in a lot of places, keeping the fuel secure is a big deal. And so as a result, we think about that as one good reason. So you've got the economics of it, and you can come right back to the environmental issues as well. Most of the new diesel engines now are going to need to be Tier 4, and it takes, again, just driving cost, and then also the complexity of having something like that out in the field. Then secondarily, when we do think about electricity, again, the interruptions, besides the cost, it's just the interruption itself. And it seems like Murphy is always at work. So as a result, we often get interrupted on the hottest of days when the evapotranspiration is at its highest rate. And we need to be putting either, not necessarily water on the crop, but making sure that our moisture profile stays built up. And we can do that just as easily at 5 in the afternoon as we can at other times during the day, and it's hard to keep caught up. So we really want to focus on that. And then I think the biggest thing we know that all of our customers, and I guess I'm right in this same boat, is nobody wants to pay taxes. So as a result, there's some really interesting tax credits out there to not only help defray the cost of the CapEx or the check that you have to write for it, but also the continuing operation. So that's why we're really thinking that this has got a great potential for a lot of our growers, and not necessarily just as we talked about at the top. This isn't just center pivot irrigators. This is really any irrigator. This is any power consumer out there in the agricultural space.
Right, be very
One
beneficial.
thing too that,
Go ahead, Aaron.
yeah, I was just going to touch on one other thing, and maybe you mentioned load monitoring or load control, but that's another, especially for the irrigators, that's another key benefit of getting, maybe I'll say getting around that, or in the heat of the day when you really need to irrigate most in a lot of places, having that additional power to do that and not have to either pay for or get your power cut can really be a big savings and big operational efficiency benefit.
Certainly. Aaron, let's stay with you. What sets ag solar apart from other solar technologies here in the U.S.?
Yeah, and I kind of touched on that a little earlier, and again, it really comes down to our distribution network of our dealers and the fact that they've been doing this for 75 years as far as providing total solutions that include the structural component as well as the electrical component and the service and support. So, our dealers aren't red light dealers, if you will, where they sell you something and they're gone. Or tail light, I guess is what you would call that, not red light, right? But anyways, they're not tail light dealers, so they're gonna be around to service and support should you have issues. Solar panels do need some bit of maintenance. They need cleaning and some other things. And so in order to ensure that you are producing power at optimal efficiency, they take a little bit of service and support. And so our dealers are well apt to manage that and to provide that level of service.
Well, as you say,
and then, Valley's been producing steel structures for, 75 years. We can leverage our sourcing across all 4 of our divisions to gain power and provide an economical solution that, as Darren touched on earlier, provides justifiable ROI. And that's something too that came from our acquisition of the company in South America, is that software that we can plug all of the data into and make a data-based ROI decision on the solution. And so leveraging and harnessing all of that is very beneficial.
Well, that's as I was going to say, the relationship there, not only with the technology and the know-how, but with the relationship that you have with the dealers and the dealers have with the growers there, that makes all the difference in the world. And Darren, in some areas, though, growers may not have access to consistent electrical power. How does Ag Solar by Valley improve their access to power resources and even offer new opportunities?
Right, absolutely. So we know that in many cases, you all have the field at the end of the line, so to speak. So maybe the transformer's not quite as good. Maybe there's just, it's one that's prone to a lot of lightning strike areas, things like that. So that's what we're able to do here is have a complete off-grid solution to where, and we're seeing that again, whether it's land that maybe you would have to run expensive new cable to. And again, as we get some age on the pivots as well, we definitely will have times where you're going to need to run new power line to the pivot. In this case, you're going to have to run a lot less line because we're probably going to put that solar panel in a pivot corner or on some non-productive land. And that will be a big benefit to the grower, as well as the fact that they can then in some cases, maybe they can sell back. So that's one of the things that why we're, mean to sound like everything's a custom solution, because we're very much productizing this. But in some localities, since they are short of power, they want to be able to what's called net metering. And so as a result, then you can sell the power back all the 724, 365, or at least during the daylight hours, and get credits back onto your electric bill.
Very interesting. So, Darren, how can growers learn more about Ag Solar by Valley?
Well, there's two main ways. Of course, you can always go into our website, which is valleyirrigation.com/solar. Or again, go to your local dealer. We have been talking out. We've done meetings this winter with our dealers. We are only really focusing on certain areas, such as Georgia, Texas, a little bit in Nebraska. So this is not a true nationwide solution at the moment, but we know as we learn more and we get more adoption out there, your Valley dealer is also a great resource. But valleyirrigation.com/solar is your best bet today.
Great source of information right there. Well, we do have to pause for a quick break, but first we're going to open our phone lines. You might be wondering if this could be a good fit for your operation. Well, give us a call, and the team with Valley is ready to answer your questions. That number is 877-731-6733, and we're giving away a Yeti cooler to one lucky on-air caller. More Rural America Live with Valley Irrigation when we come back. Welcome back to Rural America Live with Valley Irrigation. You are an important part of this conversation and this show. So our phone lines are open. Give us a call at 877-731-6733. Plus, you could win a Yeti cooler. All right, let's get back to our guests with Valley. Aaron, you hit on something really big earlier in the show, tax credits and new opportunity. What are those tax benefits and what do they mean for our growers?
Yeah, the tax benefits are really highly variable, and they're going to vary from county to county or region to region. And you need to understand what your local power district will do. Darren earlier mentioned net metering. That can be a big thing. I know areas in, say, eastern Iowa do net metering, but most of Nebraska does not do net metering. And net metering, again, is being able to basically have your meter run backwards. So, when you're generating solar energy, your meter can run backwards, and then you can use that extra energy that you've produced at any time. There's a lot of regions and power districts that don't do that, and you can buy your energy for, let's say 15 cents a kilowatt hour and sell it back for 2 cents. And so, again, it's just very variable, and that's, again, why we were putting the team together to help everyone understand those in more detail on your specific region.
Right, and if I can add in, Aaron, that's where it's great that we've got the national reach of a Valley Irrigation. So we've been out already traveling. Like I said, I already mentioned Georgia. In fact, both of us and one of our colleagues were down there a couple of weeks ago, meeting with the local power cooperatives, local power companies, and again, we need to make the math work, because you used the example of maybe it's not as bad as 15 versus 2. But we often hear it could be, say, I'm going to have to buy my power at 8 cents and only be able to sell it back at 4. So again, I know we're throwing a lot of numbers around tonight, but here's the thing. Like I said, when we were down in Georgia, we heard that sometimes rates got as high as 21 cents per kilowatt. So those are the kinds of things that we want to hone in on and be able to come back and provide the complete package. So that's why we've got our team spread out throughout the U.S., finding the sweet spot where we can really give farmers great payback.
That is very good. Now, we've got our first caller on the line. We're going to go to Georgia, as a matter of fact. And Bo, what's your question this evening?
Yes, I was watching and wanting to know, does solar work well in Georgia?
Well, thanks for the call, Bo. We definitely think so for a couple of reasons. Like I said, we've seen much higher power rates there than, say, we may have in Nebraska, where I'm from. So that's one big thing, is that, like I said, that 15 to 20 cents a kilowatt seems like that's a pretty hefty price, and most of our installations can come in with a pretty rapid payback. And then the secondarily is, again, just get your map out, and we know Georgia is one of our southernmost states in the United States. And so anyway, anytime we can get closer to the equator, then obviously we're going to be able to pick up more of the sun. Because one of the options that we have is that we do, since Valmont is a global company and we have other divisions, at some point we can bring in what's called a tracker. And that means that the panel is actually going to move with the sun. So once again, that's something that our engineers can look at, and depending upon how much power you need and where you're at, it may be advantageous to have the panels actually move, or we just do a fixed installation. So no, we've got some really great dealers in Georgia. We're ready to hone in on them, and we'd love to be able to tell you more about your specific operation offline.
Bo, thank you so much for that call from Georgia. And don't forget, you can call in, be part of the show, 877-731-6733. We will be giving away a Yeti cooler a little later in the show. Aaron, you've talked about this a little bit already, about the effectiveness of solar power on the operation and make it more efficient. Talk more specifically about that and how producers can benefit from this and the solar power.
Yeah, one good example is we've got actually one of our dealers who has installed a solar solution at their dealership and is able to, for the last 2 years, power their entire dealership, as well as a pivot that they have there. And so again, I mean, they're not grid reliant on that. I mentioned earlier the load monitoring. So that's another area where in the heat of the day, when you really need to irrigate, if you can rely on your solar instead of the grid, that's another benefit and operational efficiency. And also, and this is Kenneth Brock, who's our VP of North America Sales, had brought it up. 20 years ago, you wanted to put a pivot somewhere, and the grid was, I don't know, a mile or two away. You call the power company, and they're, oh, sure, we'll run the power down there. Because they're going to sell you the electricity. Well, now you call the power company and say, oh, hey, I want to get electricity here. It's 2 miles away. And they're like, okay, $125,000 and we'll get it there, right? And so this can open up the door to maybe some areas that weren't otherwise available for irrigation. And it's not just irrigation, as Darren has mentioned. It's really anything that from your operation that you do. So whether it's grain bin fans or grain dryers, pumping water for other things, maybe you're furrow irrigation or moving water to cattle ponds, really any of that stuff, right, that is grid reliant, that you can utilize solar to have a positive ROI and really start gaining some financial impacts in your operation.
That's
I think there's one other big key, Aaron, that that we absolutely have a lot of our growers, and again, the traditional times, most of our pivots are going to be growing corn and soybeans, but we have a lot of potatoes, a lot of onions, a lot of quote unquote people food is becoming more and more popular to be grown underneath center pivots. And we've already seen the demands placed upon the growers by whether it's the people that are making French fries or making potato chips or making onion rings. They really want to know everything about how that food is grown. Obviously, consumers are demanding that today, but they have a lot of pressures as well to provide that information that the crops are being grown in a sustainable manner. And so that's where we have this balancing act that, again, we're not going to put in an installation just to purely drive the environmental efficiency, but when we have that harmonization of the good ROI and the environmentally friendly solution, it really provides something powerful for our growers, and that's something that's very unique, we believe, to what we're bringing to the party.
Yeah, hitting on a lot of key components there. We have our next caller. We're going to go to Alabama, and Roy. Roy, what's your question?
Yeah, I just wondered if I could put it on my dwelling house. Put that solar on my dwelling house.
Did you guys get that question?
I think it's I think so. I didn't hear exactly the house, whether it was a laying house or whether it was a
delivering house,
poultry.
I think is what he said.
And regardless, yes, you can, Roy. Again, I think what we're able to do in a lot of cases is take a look at your individual operation. But yes, we do have some rooftop installations. It's not something that we haven't done before. We just want to make sure and take a look at it. And then the question's going to be, though, is can we get enough rooftop area to really drive enough power to make it worth your while? So yes, we do have applications. I don't know off the top of my head of our 500. I know we have at least 50 to 100 already down in South America that are using the rooftop as well.
Yeah,
Good
worth
question.
following
Thanks.
up there. And Darren, I know we've talked about how clean and efficient solar is, but what about the reliability? Because how does the technology ensure producers who have a consistent supply of power to their operation and keep it running? Because we know that there are some areas that don't always have a lot of sunshine and they have different weather patterns. So how do you leverage the power of the sun when it's actually not there?
Sure. Well, and this is really an important key because, again, I want to stress this is not anything that we've invented. These products are all ones that we're buying that are commercially available. So we're, whether it's the solar panel, whether it's the inverter. But this is what really got us excited about Solbras, which is the company we bought in Brazil, and now we're marketing as Ag Solar, Valley Ag Solar, obviously, is we have a software program. And not only is the software program used on the front end for design, but it ties in to our existing programs as well. So you can literally see day by day, minute by minute, the power that's being generated. So at that point, first of all, that your investment's paying off, but then secondarily, if you do need to get into alternate power situations, that the power's coming. Last but not least, again, having grown up, any time that there was a clap of lightning within a 3-mile radius, our power went off. Let's face it, there are still places that we need to monitor that. And once again, it's not uncommon that during the season, there's going to be that stray electrical storm come through that's going to knock your power off. That's something that, again, the software that we have is going to provide those alerts to you and let you know that your machine or your pump is up and running.
Darren, to touch on another thing too that we're at least investigating is the storage. And so we're looking at a couple different solutions. One kind of maybe more as a sprint and one is more of a marathon. And it really just depends on, when you're needing to use that power as far as what solution makes sense. And there's a lot of development going on in that realm right now of different storage solutions that we're really getting our finger on the pulse of. There's lithium-ion batteries out there. That's a pretty well-proven storage solution. The main challenge with that is the cost, and so that can add quite a bit of additional expense. But again, we're looking at some other solutions, and hopefully our goal is to be able to provide some storage solutions as well, so you can store that critical energy that you're capturing.
All right, let's go to the phone lines again. We're going to go to Texas now. Eddie, what's your question?
Yes, we run 3,500 acres down here in deep South Texas. I just wanted to find out, because we irrigate, with a pump, and sometimes we need more power, but how does the solar panels hold up to a hurricane? We get a hurricane down here maybe every 11 years or so, sometimes a little longer. Are they pretty stout? Are they pretty tough? Withhold, 135 mile an hour winds or something like that?
Yeah, they are, and a lot of that goes into the structure as well. Again, the other thing is hail too, right? So they're designed to be out in outdoor elements, and so they really are designed to withstand those extreme events. Now, obviously, really extreme tornadoes and those of sorts, they can play a role in that. But I would say in general, the entire solution is designed to be able to be robust for those scenarios.
And that's what I would add in, Aaron, is that obviously, or not obviously, but obviously we know there's a lot of extreme weather around. But to that point, I would go ahead and add that we factor wind load into there. And so once again, that's where it's important to know where you're at on the map. So in your case, Eddie, hey, we've got to be hurricane rated. And even if the panels themselves aren't going to hold up, that's where, again, our experience with fabricating and designing the steel structure absolutely is going to be the case, that we know that we need to not just design the steel, but make sure we put the right anchors in the ground so that you're not going to have those issues. Or if you do have the issues, we're going to still have something that can be used and easily plugged back in, for lack of a better term, when those things happen. And to your point, like you said, you irrigate with a pump. We've got plenty of those installations as well. So that's really where the most horsepower or the most kilowatts, whatever measure you want to use, that's really what drives the energy consumption.
Eddie, thanks for that call from Texas. And don't forget, you can call in and get a chance to win a Yeti cooler. We would love to hear from you, because one lucky caller is going to be able to win that Yeti cooler. And that phone number is 877-731-6733. And you can talk directly with our experts from Valley Irrigation about this ag solar coming. I'm so excited about this because I've seen them working in other places, and so it's fascinating to be able to hear from you guys tonight and how this is going to work here. So call in if you've got a question for Aaron or Darren from Valley Irrigation. Darren, let's go back to you. We know that every minute counts on the farm. So how easy is it if somebody wanted to transition into the ag solar? How easy is this to install and integrate a solar solution with Valley?
Again, that's where, the power of our dealer network is where it's really going to differentiate this kind of solution. So we already talked about, I don't think we want to use the term red light, Aaron, but we'll use tail light warranty. So again, our dealers are in that community. They know how to service agriculture. They understand, again, when it's the 4th of July weekend, that's not when you get to go on vacation when you're in the irrigation business. But more importantly, we've got the ability that we've got things that are tried, we've got things that are proven, and those dealers are already dealing with a lot of time 3-phase 480 power, so they know that this isn't the sort of installation that just I can do on the weekend. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be able to operate inside the regulations and inside the rules that exist in those the area that you're in. And that's why we think our dealers are a natural fit to do that. So really, this is a turnkey installation. The grower, other than giving us the site and access to the site, and working with the power company, as far as turning wrenches, as far as wiring any connections yourself, that isn't something that the grower is going to do. That's where our dealer network comes in.
Backed up by that team. I like that. All right, let's go to Arkansas next and talk to Pam. Pam, what's your question for Valley tonight?
Does the solar work like a sundial? Do the solar panels work like a sundial? Do they follow the sun?
Pam, thanks for that question. They can, but usually what we see is that if we go with the ones that move and are, whether you want to say whether they articulate or they track, that's really based on two functions. It's based a function of cost. And then like in Arkansas, you might kind of be right on the cut line. And what I mean by that is that you may get enough sunlight that when we quote unquote do the math, a fixed installation may work just fine. But yes, the ability to track is something that our company, we have that experience in our utility division. They're doing it for large for large utility companies already. And that's definitely a tool in our toolkit, but we don't always have to install that because again, anything that moves is one more point of failure. So we need to make sure that we run maintenance on it, make sure that we set it up correctly in the beginning. Again, that's where the Valley dealer comes in, but we have both fixed and moving solar installations.
Yeah, I can see how each region would be different and might need something different on that particular farm and area. So, Pam, thank you for that call. Darren, I wanted to ask you too, we've mentioned how well solar works with other Valley technologies like Valley 365. Let's get into some of the technologies that you recently launched so growers can explore how to maximize their efficiency and profitability. Why is it important to have integrated farm management?
Well, again, this is really the key to our company. And as I talked about at the beginning, that's been a great thing that I've gotten to do over the last 4 or 5 years is I'll let Aaron in a minute talk about the stuff that we develop, but we've gone out and found whether it be artificial intelligence, whether it be the ability to control fertigation pumps, again, bringing together a complete solution for complete farm management. And that's really the idea behind Valley 365, the connected crop management. Because again, we do so much more than water. So the ability to fertigate, the ability to know what's going on in your field 24/7. Because if you remember, the center pivot was the original robot out there in the field. And we're the only device that's out there in your field every day of the year. And so that's really been the focus over these last 4 or 5 years with our technology stack is to bring that, again, the things that we can do a lot of things, but we really want to focus on the things that drive the payback. So again, that's around the energy, around the water, around the fertilizer. But I'll let Aaron take off now and talk about a couple of our most recent developments that we just released here at the fall selling season or the fall show season.
All right. Well, we're going to open up the phone lines again as well. We can take your calls and your questions. And don't forget, we are going to give away that Yeti cooler, 877-731-6733. And then we're going to continue to visit with Aaron and Darren. Before we go to break, though, in case you're just getting home and joining us, we do have Valley Irrigation with us. And guys, where can they go to learn more information if they want to do kind of some homework on their own?
And that's absolutely valleyirrigation.com/solar or your local Valley dealer.
All right, valleyirrigation.com is where you can get a lot of the answers to your questions you might have. And again, phone lines are open. Call in. We'd love to hear from you. 877-731-6733. Still looking to give away that Yeti cooler to one lucky on-air caller. It could be you, so pick up that phone. We've got more Rural America Live when we come back. Thanks for joining us here on Rural America Live with Valley Irrigation. Our phone lines are open. You can give us a call at 877-731-6733, and you might just win a Yeti cooler. Let's go back and visit again with Aaron and Darren with Valley. And Aaron, I think saving time and money are at the top of the list for any grower. Of course, this fall, you also launched Machine Diagnostics. Explain what Machine Diagnostics is for our audience.
Yeah, machine diagnostics is really your eyes and your ears to what's going on your irrigation machine. As a product manager, I spend a lot of time talking to growers, and the one thing that continues to come up over and over again with virtually anybody that I talk to is, if you could just tell me what's broke and where it's broke, that would be a huge time savings for me. So I don't have to spend so much time just diagnosing what the problem is. So we listen to that and develop machine diagnostics, which is just that. It's your eyes and your ears for your irrigation machine. And there's really two phases of development for machine diagnostics. And what we've recently launched is what we refer to as low voltage, and we're monitoring the alignment of the system, the tire pressure of each tire, the water pressure at each tower, and a product called X-Tech High Speed, which I'll touch on here in a couple minutes. But we're also monitoring that and being able to get the fault codes off of that product back to the panel and back to the mobile app, Valley 365. So you can have all of that information at your fingertips to be prepared to go to the field to fix the problem and decrease downtime and increase uptime.
That time is money. We do know that. We have our next caller from Illinois. Lyle, what's your question?
It's a multifaceted question. I'm going to put in a 10-tower older used system on a rented farm, pipe the water to it from my electric wells, but I need a 7 kW generator, alternator set, to run the pivot and provide power for my AgSense. And I'm wondering how many panels it's going to take to provide that 7 kW alternator.
We'll double check on that one, Lyle, but off the top of my head, 7K, that'd be like 3 or 4 panels at the most.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it goes back to what we've been talking about as far as location, number of hours of sunlight, climate, et cetera. And so that's a tough question, at least for me to answer off the cuff. But 7 kW, yeah, it wouldn't be a large area. It would be a relatively small area.
Yeah, I'd say 7, 8 panels probably. Again, that's where we do the math and get it checked out for you. But definitely, we can follow up with your local dealer and follow up offline on that one.
And just as a follow-up from me, can you do that? I mean, can you do something that small? You don't need 3 or 4 acres worth of panels? You do just what you need?
Right, absolutely, Tammy, because that was what we talked about at the lead-in, and that was Lyle's point of only needing 7 kW is all you're trying to do at that point is run the AgSense or the Icon panel, which is our remote monitoring, and then the pivot itself, which again is a fairly low power load. And in this case, and this is a perfect example of that, 90%, 95% of the power is coming off of those wells and to get the power to the pivot. The pivot itself is a pretty efficient machine and getting more and more efficient with the latest in motor technology and some of the things that Aaron spoke of earlier.
All right, good to know. Next, let's go to Arizona and Jimmy. Jimmy, what's your question for Valley?
Yeah, I have a question for a solar panel for, how do you get a solar panel for a mobile home for site or energy power?
Yeah, Jimmy, thanks for the call. And I would say off the top of my head, we don't know. And what I mean by that is that I'm sure they exist, but, and maybe, you know, depending upon the local Valley dealer, he might know exactly what to do, but we've really not focused on that market because again, we like to think, although it might not always show up here on TV tonight, we at least have the resources. We know a lot about irrigation and a lot about farming, but as far as the consumption and the rules and regs around a residential or a quasi kind of commercial use like that, that's really not our target market. So sorry we can't help you, but maybe in a year or two when we start to learn a little bit more and maybe might be able to at least point you in the right direction.
Right, Jimmy, of course, never hurts to ask, right? All right, our next caller is Ben from South Dakota. And Ben, congratulations, you have won a Yeti cooler. So thanks for calling in tonight. Yeah, what's your question?
I'm so excited.
Yay.
Thank you, guys.
You have a question for us?
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, so, oh gosh, I got tons of questions. Okay, so the environmental impact, like, is cattle able to go under, or can stuff grow underneath the stuff, or do you have to spray for weeds, or what's going on with that kind of stuff? I guess.
Yeah, I can take a shot at it. Yes, I mean, all of that I would say is required or can be done. Anything's possible. You space them out and you can graze around them, or a lot of them like to keep them fairly clean. You do have to be careful of the weeds because if they can grow up high enough and start getting over top and creating a foliage over the solar panel, that can decrease your efficiency. So it's important to make sure that you're keeping all of that away from the face of the panel so that it can get the maximum sunlight.
But I think one of the things that's really interesting is, and again, this is where we really need to take a look at it, Ben, is if you want to get really carried away, we can put a little bit of elevation on those panels and use them as sunshades in the summer. Yeah. So at that point, there are people that are actively using, doing grazing in solar fields that we know of. So again, we'd want to take a look at that application, but maybe we'd put those a little higher in the air than we normally would if you want the cattle to get under them. Otherwise, as Aaron said, you do have to think more about then just how do we keep the weeds knocked down, whether that's a spraying application or some sort of program like that.
All right, Ben, thank you for that call, and once again, congratulations. Next, we're going to go back to Alabama and visit with Andy. Andy, what's your question?
I got a couple of questions. Do y'all deal with like a hobby farmer? Because, I'm looking at the TV and it's got acres, but, we've only got 60 acres, and don't grow a whole lot, mostly cows, but interested in the solar thing. And are all solar panels created equal? If not, what brand do you prefer?
So Andy, I'd say again, we would want to take a look at your application, and it's not inconceivable that we would work with you. And again, it's all about the payback. So I need to say that a different way. I apologize. We're happy to work with you and take a look at it, but again, it's just going to be really whether it's set up for you. As far as the solar panels. For the easy answer is probably yes. And what I mean by that is we've got 2 or 3 providers that we are working on. We've got one that we'll do a global contract with here that hopefully we can announce in the coming weeks. And that's really a function of economics. Yes, we know that there's technologies advancing all the time, but for the most part, I would say the solar panels are somewhat created equal. It's making sure we put them in the right spot with the right pitch so that then they can provide the maximum return for you. But no, great questions. And again, that's where we're on a learning curve on this one. And that's you never know unless you ask, as we told an earlier caller. So we're not shutting you out. We just want to make sure that it's worth your time and our time both.
Yeah, and so Andy, definitely follow up and see if it is a fit for your little small operation. I love that. Aaron, so to further maximize your time and resources in fine-tuning your pivot, tell us a bit more about the X-Tech high-speed center drive.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a project that I worked on quite a bit and I'm pretty excited about. And it's a drivetrain solution that enables your pivot to circle the machine in roughly 90 minutes. So that'd be about a 7-span, quarter-mile machine. And again, this was really driven from voice of customer. We had a large potato producer actually that came to us and said, hey, we want to get all of our spray rigs out of the field and quit flying airplanes over it. But in order to do that, we need to go about 90 minutes, make a lap in about 90 minutes. And the primary reason was to be able to put the chemicals through the machine that they would typically do through aerial or ground rig. And so our engineering team went to work. We leveraged the X-Tech product that we launched about 4 years ago, and so we use a lot of the same features of that. However, for the motor control, we're using a Yaskawa VFD, which is a very reliable VFD, and then a 3 horsepower center drive motor, and so this really opens up the landscape. So yeah, this is what these people wanted to do, but we've got some of these. Matter of fact, we sold one to an apple orchard who is using it for frost protection. So they want to make sure it's on a high profile machine And if it gets cold and they want to spray a real light mist over their apple trees to prevent frost, that's what they are going to be using it for. Germination on carrots is a big one, or keeping small seeds from blowing away. And I've actually been surprised at the amount of interest and questions I've gotten from people wanting to control wind, I'll call wind erosion or blow sand. So they want to run the machine around and just apply a real light application to preserve their topsoil. So, those are just a couple examples of what you can do. I'm sure if you think outside the box a little bit, you might be able to think of some even other stuff you could do with a pivot that moves that fast.
And Aaron, I'd like to add too, this is back to the technology improvements all around agriculture. So at this point, this is where we really want to go back to the chemigation and fertigation, because today the formulations are so much more precise. And that's why we really need to get around a lot more quickly, because we cannot apply the amount of water when we provide the crop protection or the crop nutrition that maybe we historically would. Also, again, back to our good friends, the regulations, sometimes in some states, the grower actually has to be there when some of those products are applied, especially when we think about some of the fungicides and some of the pesticides. So again, who wants to sit there for hours and hours when a pivot goes around? At that point, I'm going to hop in a spray rig or I'm going to hire the plane. So this is a great way to provide a better payback, not only from the precision, but also on the grower's time as well.
All right, guys, we've only got about 3 minutes left, but I do want to ask this question before we get to final thoughts. Are you seeing any specific areas or terrains that are more apt to use this high-speed drive?
That's a great question. We're going 10 times faster than a standard machine, and because of that, there brings some challenges with that. So I would say generally, flatter fields and higher value crops is really where this product is going to pay out. There are some slope limitations that are a little lower than a standard machine, and I would encourage you to reach out to your Valley dealer. And we've got a dealer locator on our website, valleyirrigation.com, if you don't know who your local Valley dealer is. But reach out to your local Valley dealer and have them assess the terrain of the field and what you're wanting to put this on, and we can help them and work through everything to make sure that it is going to be a reliable installation.
All right, we have just a couple of minutes left, so each of you get a minute to wrap up and kind of give final thoughts for our viewers tonight. Darren, let's start with you.
Absolutely. Well, and since you said I only have a minute, I could take Aaron's minute, but I won't do that to him. But really, the takeaway from tonight isn't just the real excitement that we have to provide a new energy solution. This is just one more brick in our great foundation of technology. So again, the future's really now. Connected crop management, and this just isn't playing games on your phone all day long, or as my wife might say, me just paying attention to my phone instead of her all day long. This is really the ability to get out and do remote management in the field and be able to drive predictable payback. And so as a result, we can utilize that pivot to save time, to save money, and in this case, the future's now, we can really start to drive some of that artificial intelligence and use what the pivot's picking up, use satellite imagery, use aerial imagery to find things that the naked eye can't. So this is an exciting time for us, because even though we're 75 years old, we think the technology is out there to really change how people view our irrigation solutions and make it a true connected crop solution.
All right. Well, Aaron, you have 10 seconds.
To kind of go off of what Darren said, technology is not going away, and we're doing everything that we can to provide solutions.
So sorry to interrupt you guys. So sorry. Great being with Valley Irrigation.